Everything we buy or eat carries a hidden energy price tag. If you have any doubts about that, just have dinner with Xavier Bengoa, a professional life cycle analyst. He tallies the energy cost of everything we consume, even a simple glass of wine.
In order to get your glass of wine here, there are probably about 2,500 industrial processes involved at some point.
The pesticides and fertilizers used in growing the grapes, the glass that was manufactured to make the bottle, the shipping, all required energy that's embodied in every sip.
Light bulb or...
That's not to single out wine. A ballpoint pen, the plastic, the ink, the tungsten ball at the tip. It all takes energy to make. The lithium battery in your cell phone, the leather in your shoes, takes energy. Most of the energy behind everything we buy gets burnt before it even gets to us. So if there's one thing that you as an energy expert would do to change your behavior or my behavior, what would that be? Just one thing.
I'd eat less meat. It's just huge, the amount of energy you need to grow a cow and to get a steak in your plate.
Turns out, raising cows takes a long time and a huge amount of energy. You need to feed them for years before you get your steak. Producing beef uses 10 times more fossil fuel energy than a meal of chicken, and 16 times more than a plate of veggies. How much meat do we eat in the West?
In the US, it's about 66 pounds per person per year. It's the same as the energy produced by 15 average nuclear power plants in the US.
That's incredible.
In 1 year. Yeah, it's huge.
So small changes in our behavior can have a huge impact. Simply being aware of the energy cost of things we consume may help us lower our global energy demand and start tipping the energy balance in our favor. We're going to need to, because one vital energy source that's keeping us on the go may be running out much faster than we dare to think. More than any other energy sources, we rely on oil, coal, and natural gas to power our lives. Altogether, these fossil fuels supply over 80% of our energy needs, and oil is the leader of the pack. Today, oil is at the center of our entire economy. Goods are manufactured in every corner of the world and shipped in every direction. It's a finely tuned machine, and none of it could happen without oil. In the US, we consume over 870 million gallons of oil a day. That's 588,000 gallons every minute. These numbers are all too familiar to ecologist Charles Hall, who's been raising alarms about our oil addiction for decades.
This is the essence of our civilization. People say that we live in an information age or that we live in a post-industrial age. That's not true at all. We live in an oil age.
It's taken 300 million years for Earth to produce 1.7 trillion barrels of good, recoverable oil. It's taken us only a few hundred years to burn through it. Many say we've already used half the oil that's easy to get to on the planet.
Any non-renewable resource goes through a period of discovery, figuring out how to use it, an increase, a peak, and a decline as the resource is exhausted. For the United States, the peak in oil was in 1970. We're halfway down the other side of the curve. Well, oil's still here, it's still important, but it isn't anything like it used to be.
Our solution to oil shortages so far has been simple: drill for more. And from miles below the ocean to the frozen high Arctic, our appetite for oil has taken us to places so hostile and remote, they were written off just 10 years ago. The oil sands of Canada are a perfect example. Trapped in this dirt are nearly 7 trillion gallons of oil, enough to last at least 100 years. The reserve is second only to Saudi Arabia's. The trouble is, the oil isn't nearly as easy to get. The oil here can't be pumped like a liquid. It's thick and heavy and requires many tons of earth to be mined and moved.
Every 2 tons of material on that truck is going to be converted into 1 barrel of oil. So if it's got 400 tons of material on that truck, that's 200 barrels of oil on the way down the pipeline.
Before a single gallon makes it to a pipeline, though, the oil has to be extracted from the sand, requiring extreme heat, enormous amounts of water, and a whole lot of energy. In other words, it's starting to take a lot of energy to make energy. Until recently, the beauty of oil has been that it didn't cost that much to get it. Back when we first started pumping the stuff a century ago, it took only 1 barrel of oil to get 100 out of the ground. Today in Saudi Arabia, it takes 1 barrel to get 20. And here in the Canadian oil sands, you have to use 1 barrel to get 5.
We're looking at oil up there, oil over there. We're going to look everywhere. But at some point, it's going to cost you more oil to find the next barrel of oil, or certainly to find and develop it. That's the end of the oil age.
Even if we can somehow find a way to keep the oil taps flowing, continuing to burn it may cause us an even bigger problem. Every time we fire up an engine and put our foot on the pedal, we're sending carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It's hard to appreciate since we can't see it. So let's see it. Imagine every mile you drive, your car dumps out a pound of trash onto the highway. Now imagine all the other cars around you are doing exactly the same. Well, that's what we're doing with carbon dioxide. The big SUV, 2 pounds per mile. The giant truck, well, that's 10 pounds per mile. Ships drop about 4,000 per mile. Airplanes, about 250. Add to that the world's coal plants, which dump billions of pounds more. Well, all those pounds start adding up pretty quickly, and they stay in the atmosphere for a very, very long time. And that, most scientists agree, is really bad news for the climate. All this accumulating carbon dioxide is beginning to raise the Earth's global temperature. If we want the climate to stay within a safe range, most scientists say we'd have to dramatically limit the amount of fossil fuels we use by 2050. Instead of making up 80% of our energy mix, as they do now, fossil fuels will need to drop down to about 15%. And our other energy sources will need to make up the difference. But maybe changes in our behavior can lower the amount of oil we need. If everyone cut their driving in half, we would save about 2% of the total global demand. It doesn't sound like much, but that's still 50 billion gallons of oil, equivalent to taking every single vehicle off the road for nearly 40 days. Can't drive less? Not to worry. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. Share a ride to work with just one other person. Buy a car that gets double the mileage. Or telecommute 2 to 3 times a week. Each, in effect, halves your need for gas. We can all find unique ways to get our numbers down. But no matter how much we reduce our energy use here in the US, there are important new players on the world stage today. And their appetite for energy is only growing.